The mahogany dining table stretched 12 feet across the formal dining room of the Whitmore estate, but tonight it felt impossibly small to Richard Whitmore as he watched his 7-year-old daughter Emma push her vegetables around her plate with determined disinterest. "Emma, sweetheart, eat your broccoli," he said, his voice carrying the exhaustion of a single father who'd been fighting the same battle for 3 years, ever since his wife Claire had died in the car accident that had shattered their perfect life. "I don't like broccoli," Emma replied without looking up, her strawberry blonde curls falling across her face like a curtain she could hide behind. Richard glanced toward the kitchen, where he could see Maria Santos cleaning the pots from dinner, her movements efficient and quiet. At 42, Maria had been with their family for 5 years, arriving when Emma was just 2 years old. She'd stayed through Claire's death, through the chaos of grief, through Richard's clumsy attempts at single parenthood. "Maria makes it better," Emma added quietly, still focused on rearranging her food. "Maria's not here to cook differently just for you, sweetheart. She prepares what I ask her to prepare." Emma's blue eyes, so much like her mother's, finally looked up at him with that serious expression that made her seem older than her 7 years. "Maria asks me what I like. You just tell her what to make." The simple statement hit Richard like a physical blow, not because it was cruel, but because it was true. In his efforts to maintain structure and normalcy after Claire's death, he'd been making decisions for Emma without consulting her, assuming he knew what was best. Later that evening, after Emma had gone to bed, Richard sat in his study nursing a brandy and confronting a truth he'd been avoiding for months. Emma needed a mother figure, and he needed a wife, not just for companionship, but for the practical matter of giving his daughter the stable, nurturing home she deserved. His social circle was full of eligible women, beautiful, accomplished socialites who would fit seamlessly into his world of charity galas, business dinners, and country club events. Women who understood the expectations that came with marrying a man of his position. The solution, he decided, was surprisingly simple. He would introduce Emma to a select few of these women, the most suitable candidates, and let her help choose. What 7-year-old girl wouldn't be excited about picking out a new mother? The next morning at breakfast, Richard presented his plan with the confidence of a man who'd solved a complex business problem. "Emma, I have something important to discuss with you," he began, cutting his eggs Benedict with precise movements. "You know how Daddy gets lonely sometimes, and how you sometimes wish you had a mommy like your friends do?" Emma looked up from her cereal, suddenly alert. "Well, I've been thinking it might be time for our family to grow. There are some very nice ladies I'd like you to meet. We could have them over for dinner, maybe go on some fun outings, and you could help me decide which one might make the best new mommy for you." He expected excitement, curiosity, maybe even some questions about the logistics. Instead, Emma's spoon stopped halfway to her mouth, and her expression grew troubled. "I have to pick a new mommy." "Not have to, sweetheart. Get to. It would be like choosing a special friend who would come live with us and take care of you." "But what about Mommy Claire?" Richard felt his chest tighten. Even 3 years later, conversations about Claire could still knock the wind out of him. Mommy Claire will always be your real mommy, in your heart. This would be a bonus mommy, someone to help take care of you and make our family complete. Emma considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. "Can I think about it?" "Of course. But Emma, these are very special ladies. They're all accomplished and beautiful, and they would be able to give you opportunities. Riding lessons, piano, trips to Europe. They know how to be proper mothers for little girls who are going to grow up in our world. That afternoon, Richard's assistant began coordinating the campaign with military precision. 3 women had been selected based on their social standing, compatibility with Richard, and perceived maternal potential. Victoria Ashford, 32, came from old money and had spent 2 years on the Junior League board. She was elegant, well-educated, and had expressed interest in settling down. Stephanie Cross, 28, was a former debutante turned art gallery owner who moved in the right circles and had been asking mutual friends about Richard's availability for months. Catherine Winters, 35, was a widow herself with impeccable taste and a natural grace that made her the perfect hostess at any social function. "The first dinner is tomorrow," Richard announced to Emma that evening as she sat at her small desk in the corner of his study, working on homework while he handled business calls. "Victoria Ashford is coming. She's very excited to meet you." Emma looked up from her math worksheet. "Daddy, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you love any of these ladies?" The question caught Richard off guard. In his practical approach to solving their family problem, he'd focused on compatibility, suitability, long-term potential. Love, he'd assumed, would develop over time. Love grows, sweetheart. When people are well suited to each other and share similar values and goals, love develops naturally. Emma frowned, clearly not satisfied with this answer. "Did you love Mommy Claire right away?" Richard's throat tightened as memories flooded back, meeting Claire at a college party, being struck dumb by her laugh, calling her the next day despite his usual 3-day rule, knowing within a week that he wanted to marry her. Mommy Claire was different, special. What made her different? She made me feel like the best version of myself. She made everything more fun, more meaningful. She saw things in ways that surprised me. Emma nodded solemnly, as if filing this information away for future reference. Victoria Ashford arrived precisely at 7 o'clock, dressed in a navy blue sheath dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She was everything Richard had expected, poised, articulate, and appropriately interested in Emma without being overwhelming. "What a beautiful home," Victoria said, as Richard led her through the foyer, her heels clicking smartly on the marble floor. "And this must be Emma." Emma had been coached on proper introductions and offered a polite handshake. "Nice to meet you, Miss Ashford." "Oh, you can call me Victoria, sweetheart. Your father has told me so many wonderful things about you." At dinner, Victoria demonstrated exactly why she'd been chosen. She asked Emma appropriate questions about school and activities, complimented her table manners, and discussed with Richard the importance of cultural enrichment for children. "I believe strongly in exposing children to the arts," Victoria said, cutting her salmon with practiced precision. "The symphony, opera, museums. It's never too early to develop sophisticated tastes." Emma listened politely but said little beyond answering direct questions. "Emma is quite shy," Richard explained as Victoria prepared to leave. "She takes time to warm up to people." "Of course," Victoria replied graciously. "She seems like a very well-behaved little girl. With the right guidance, she'll make a lovely young lady." After Victoria left, Richard found Emma in her room, already in her pajamas, but staring out the window instead of reading her bedtime story. "What did you think of Victoria?" he asked, sitting on the edge of her bed. "She's very pretty." "She is, and very smart too. She went to excellent schools and knows about art and music and all the things that would be good for you to learn." Emma turned from the window. Daddy, does she make you feel like the best version of yourself? Richard paused, considering the question seriously. Victoria was impressive, certainly. She would be an asset to his social and business life. But had he felt energized by her presence? Inspired? More himself? It's early yet, sweetheart. Sometimes these things take time. The second dinner with Stephanie Cross went similarly. Stephanie was warmer than Victoria, more playful in her interaction with Emma, and she shared Richard's interest in contemporary art. She brought Emma a small sketch pad and colored pencils, which earned the first genuine smile of the evening. I love to draw, Stephanie said, sitting beside Emma at the table. Maybe sometime we could draw together. I could teach you about different techniques. Emma's eyes lit up with interest. I like to draw horses. Horses are wonderful subjects. They're so graceful and powerful. Have you ever been riding? No, but I want to learn. Richard felt a spark of hope as he watched the easy interaction between them. This was more like what he'd envisioned. But later, when he asked Emma for her thoughts, she was again reserved. She's nice. She really likes art. She seems to like you too, and she mentioned she'd love to take you to riding lessons. That would be fun, Emma agreed, but without the enthusiasm Richard had expected. Catherine Winters, the third candidate, was perhaps the most impressive of all. As a widow who had raised her own daughter, she understood the complexities of grief and blended families. She spoke to Emma with genuine empathy about missing her mother and offered practical wisdom about healing. You know, Catherine said as they sat in the living room after dinner, I lost my husband 5 years ago. My daughter Madison was about your age. It's okay to miss your mommy and still be open to loving someone new. The heart has room for both. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Do you still miss your husband? Every day. But I've learned that love doesn't disappear when someone dies. It just changes shape. And sometimes when we're very lucky, we find new love that makes us grateful to be alive. Richard felt moved by Catherine's honesty and grace. She was exactly the kind of woman who could help heal their family while building something beautiful and new. That night, as he tucked Emma into bed, Richard felt optimistic about the future for the first time in months. So, sweetheart, you've met 3 wonderful ladies now. What do you think? Do any of them feel like they could be part of our family? Emma was quiet for so long that Richard thought she might have fallen asleep. Then, in a small voice, she said, Daddy, I've been thinking about what you said, about picking a new mommy. And I know who I want to choose. Richard's heart leaped. You do? That's wonderful. Which one? Victoria, Stephanie, or Catherine? Emma shook her head, her blonde curls rustling against the pillow. None of them. None of them? Richard tried to hide his disappointment. Well, that's okay. There are other lovely ladies we could meet. Maybe someone younger or... No, Daddy. I already know who I want. You do? Emma nodded solemnly. I want Maria. Richard felt as if the floor had dropped out from under him. Maria? Sweetheart, Maria is our housekeeper. She's not one of the ladies we're considering. Why not? The simple question hung in the air between them, and Richard found himself scrambling for an answer that didn't sound elitist or cruel. Well, Maria has a different job. She works for us. And the ladies we've been meeting, they have backgrounds that match ours better. They went to good schools and understand our social obligations. Emma sat up in bed, her blue eyes serious and determined. But Maria knows how I like my sandwiches cut. She remembers that I don't like the crusts. She knows I get scared during thunderstorms, and she sits with me until they pass. She taught me how to make cookies, and she tells me stories about when she was little in El Salvador. Those are all wonderful things, sweetheart, but... And Maria makes you smile, Daddy. Really smile. Not just the polite smile you use with other people. When she brings you coffee in the morning and tells you about the funny thing she saw on TV, you laugh like you used to laugh with Mommy Claire. Richard felt his carefully constructed arguments crumbling under the weight of his daughter's observations. Emma, it's complicated. Maria and we're from very different worlds, different backgrounds, different educations, different social circles. So, people might not understand. They might think it's inappropriate. People like Miss Victoria and Miss Stephanie and Miss Catherine. People like, yes, people in our social circle. It matters, Emma. These relationships, they affect business, social standing, opportunities for your future. Emma lay back down, pulling her covers up to her chin. I still want Maria. Sweetheart, Maria might not even want to marry me. She has her own life, her own family to think about. Have you asked her? The question hit Richard like a slap. Of course he hadn't asked her. The idea of Maria as anything other than their reliable, efficient housekeeper had never seriously crossed his mind. Or had it? As he sat in the dark beside his daughter's bed, Richard was forced to confront memories he'd been unconsciously suppressing. Maria's warm laugh when he told her about his disastrous attempts at helping Emma with science projects. The way she anticipated his needs, bringing him coffee exactly how he liked it without being asked. Her gentle questions about his day, her genuine interest in his answers. The way she'd held Emma during the worst of the grief, rocking her and singing soft Spanish lullabies. How she'd quietly rearranged her schedule to be there for every nightmare, every meltdown, every moment when Emma needed comfort that Richard didn't know how to provide. The way his house felt like a home when Maria was there, and like an empty museum when she wasn't. Daddy? Emma's voice was small in the darkness. Are you mad at me? No, sweetheart. I'm not mad. I'm just thinking. About Maria? About a lot of things. Emma was quiet for a moment, then said, I know you want me to pick one of the fancy ladies, but they don't see me, Daddy. Not the way Maria sees me, and they don't see you either. What do you mean? Maria sees that you're sad sometimes, even when you're pretending to be okay. She makes your favorite soup when you have bad days at work. She knows you miss Mommy Claire too, but she doesn't act like that makes you broken. Richard felt his throat tighten. How do you know all this? I watch. Kids always watch. Emma rolled over to face him. Maria loves us, Daddy, really loves us, not because we're rich or because marrying you would be a good opportunity. She loves us because we're us. As Richard kissed his daughter goodnight and made his way to his own room, her words echoed in his mind. He found himself thinking not about Victoria's impressive credentials or Stephanie's artistic sensibilities or Catherine's wisdom, but about Maria's quiet presence that had become as essential to their lives as breathing. But could a man in his position really consider marrying the housekeeper? What would people think? What would it mean for Emma's future, for his business relationships, for their place in society? And most importantly, did Maria feel anything for him beyond professional loyalty and genuine care for Emma? For the first time in 3 years, Richard Whitmore lay awake, not thinking about quarterly reports or social obligations, but about a woman's laugh and the way she made his house feel like home. The next morning, Richard found himself watching Maria with new eyes as she moved through her usual routine. She arrived at 7 sharp, as always, letting herself in through the service entrance with the quiet efficiency that had made her invaluable to their household. "Good morning, Mr. Whitmore," she said, hanging her coat in the mudroom closet. "How did the dinner go last night?" "Fine. Catherine was very nice." Richard found himself studying Maria's face as she asked about his evening. Was that genuine interest in her dark eyes, or polite professional concern? Maria nodded, beginning her preparation of Emma's breakfast. Without being asked, she started making pancakes instead of the cereal Richard usually insisted on. Pancakes cut into star shapes with fresh berries arranged around them. "Emma loves these," Maria said, noticing his attention. "She pretends they're constellations and makes up stories about them." "I didn't know she did that." Maria paused in her cooking, a gentle smile playing at her lips. "Emma has a wonderful imagination. She told me yesterday about the kingdom where all the star pancakes live, ruled by a queen who grants wishes to children who eat their vegetables." Richard felt a familiar pang of guilt. How many of his daughter's small, imaginative moments was he missing? How many conversations, dreams, fears, and joys was he absent for while he focused on providing for her material needs? "Maria," he said carefully, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "What do you think Emma needs most right now?" Maria turned from the stove, her expression thoughtful. "You want my honest opinion?" "Yes." "Emma needs to feel secure, not financially. She knows you provide well for her. She needs to feel emotionally secure. She needs to know that the people she loves aren't going to disappear." The words hit Richard with uncomfortable accuracy. "Do you think she feels insecure about that?" "Mr. Whitmore, Emma lost her mother when she was 4. That teaches a child that love can be taken away suddenly, without warning. She's afraid to get too attached to people because she's learned that they might leave." Richard absorbed this, thinking about Emma's reserved responses to the 3 women he'd introduced her to. Had he interpreted her shyness wrong? Was it not about warming up to people, but about protecting herself from potential loss? Is that why she seems hesitant about the ladies I've been introducing her to? Maria hesitated, clearly weighing her words carefully. "It's not my place to comment on your personal decisions, Mr. Whitmore. I'm asking for your perspective, as someone who spends more time with Emma than anyone else." Maria set down her spatula and faced him fully. "Emma is a very perceptive child. She can sense when relationships are practical rather than emotional. She's looking for authenticity. Meaning, she wants to see that you genuinely care for someone, not just that you're choosing someone suitable. Children can always tell the difference between love and convenience." Before Richard could respond, Emma bounded into the kitchen, still in her pajamas, her hair a riot of morning tangles. "Maria!" she called out joyfully, running straight to the woman who opened her arms for a morning hug. "Did you make star pancakes?" "I did, mi amor. With extra berries, just how you like them." Richard watched the easy affection between them, the way Emma melted into Maria's embrace, the way Maria automatically smoothed down the child's unruly hair with maternal tenderness. "Daddy!" Emma noticed him standing there and came over for her obligatory morning hug, but Richard couldn't help but notice the difference. With Maria, Emma's affection was spontaneous and complete. With him, it felt more dutiful, though no less real. During breakfast, Richard found himself observing the dynamic between Maria and Emma with new attention. Maria didn't just serve Emma's food. She sat with her, asking about her dreams from the night before, helping her plan her day, listening to her 7-year-old observations about the world with genuine interest. "Maria, why do birds sing in the morning?" Emma asked around a mouthful of pancake. "What do you think, Emma?" "Maybe they're saying good morning to their families." "That's a beautiful idea. I think you might be right." Richard realized that Maria never dismissed Emma's questions or gave her simplified answers. She engaged with Emma's curiosity, encouraging her to think and imagine and explore ideas. After Emma left for school, Richard found himself lingering in the kitchen as Maria cleaned up from breakfast. "Maria, can I ask you something personal?" She looked up from loading the dishwasher, wariness flickering in her expression. "Yes? Are you happy working here?" "Very happy, Mr. Whitmore." "Is there something wrong with my work?" No, your work is excellent. I realized I don't know much about your life outside of this house. Do you have family, friends, other interests?" Maria straightened, clearly puzzled by the unusual personal interest. "I have a sister who lives in California with her children. Some friends from my church. I take English classes at the community college in the evenings." "English classes?" "To improve my grammar and vocabulary. I want to be better at helping Emma with her homework as she gets older." The simple statement hit Richard unexpectedly. Maria was investing in her own education to be better equipped to help his daughter. When was the last time he'd thought about improving himself for Emma's benefit? That's very thoughtful." Maria shrugged, as if continuing her education to better serve his family was the most natural thing in the world. "Maria, what do you want for your future? Your own future, I mean." She studied his face, clearly trying to understand where these questions were leading. "I want to continue learning. Maybe someday take some business classes. I've always thought about opening a small restaurant. My grandmother's recipes, you know. But that's just a dream. It doesn't have to be just a dream." "Mr. Whitmore, is everything all right? You seem different today." Richard took a deep breath, knowing he was about to cross a line that would change everything between them. "Emma told me something last night that surprised me." "Oh?" "I've been introducing her to some ladies, thinking about remarrying, wanting to find her a good stepmother." Maria's expression became carefully neutral. "That's nice. Emma could benefit from having a mother figure." "She could, but when I asked her which of the ladies she preferred..." Richard paused, watching Maria's face. "She said she didn't want any of them. She said she wanted you." Maria went very still. "Mr. Whitmore, She said you already take care of us like family, that you love us not because of what we can provide for you, but just because we're us. Emma is a very special child, and you're a good man. Of course I care about both of you. Care about us or love us?" The question hung in the air between them. Maria's hands gripped the edge of the counter, her knuckles white. "Mr. Whitmore, I think this conversation is inappropriate. I work for you. There are boundaries." "What if there didn't have to be?" Maria stared at him. "What are you asking me?" "I'm asking what Emma asked me to ask. Whether you would consider being more than just our housekeeper. Whether you would consider being my wife and Emma's mother." Maria's face went pale. "You can't be serious." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life." "Mr. Whitmore, Richard, you don't understand what you're saying. We're from completely different worlds. I'm a housekeeper from El Salvador who barely finished high school. You're a millionaire businessman who belongs to country clubs and goes to charity galas. People would never accept. I don't care what people think. Yes, you do, and you should. Your business relationships, your social standing, Emma's future opportunities All of that matters. Richard moved closer, close enough to see the tears beginning to form in her eyes. Emma's future happiness matters more. And maybe, if I'm being honest, so does mine. You don't love me, Maria said quietly. You're grateful to me, and Emma is attached to me. But that's not the same thing, isn't it? Love is what you had with your wife. I saw how you were with her, Richard. I saw how you looked at her, how you talked about her. That's not what this is. Richard thought about Claire, about the passionate, all-consuming love they'd shared. Maria was right. What he felt for her was different. But was it less meaningful? You're right. What I feel for you isn't what I felt for Claire, but maybe that's not a bad thing. Maria looked at him questioningly. What I feel for you is peaceful, comfortable, like coming home. You make me want to be a better father, a better man. When you're here, everything feels right in a way it hasn't since Claire died. That's not love, Richard. That's stability. That's gratitude. Then what is it when I find myself looking forward to seeing you every morning? When I catch myself listening for your voice in the house? When I realized last night that I've been avoiding serious relationships not because I wasn't ready, but because none of them felt as right as what I already have with you? Maria's composure finally cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. Please don't do this. Don't do what? Don't make me hope for something impossible. Richard reached out, gently touching her face. What if it's not impossible? You'll change your mind. When your friends start talking, when business associates start questioning your judgment, when Emma gets older and realizes what people think about her stepmother, you'll change your mind. I won't. You will. And where will that leave me? Where will that leave Emma when she loses another mother figure? The pain in Maria's voice broke Richard's heart. She wasn't rejecting him because she didn't care. She was protecting all of them from what she saw as inevitable heartbreak. Maria, look at me. She met his eyes reluctantly. I can't promise that it will be easy. I can't promise that people won't judge or that there won't be challenges. But I can promise that I won't change my mind about you, about us. How can you know that? Because I've spent 3 years trying to find someone suitable for Emma and for me. Someone who would fit into our lives without disrupting them. But Emma was right. What we need isn't someone suitable. We need someone who loves us, really loves us, and I hope, that's you. Maria closed her eyes, tears still flowing. This is crazy. Maybe, but Emma seems to think it makes perfect sense, and lately, I'm starting to trust her judgment more than my own. When Maria opened her eyes, something had shifted in her expression. Hope, tentative and fragile, but unmistakably there. What are you really asking me, Richard? I'm asking if you love me, if you love Emma, and if you do, I'm asking if you'd be willing to build a life with us, not as our employee, but as our family. Maria was quiet for a long moment, searching his face. I've loved both of you for longer than I should have, she whispered finally. But love doesn't solve everything. There will be obstacles. We'll face them together. People will say terrible things. Let them. Emma might face discrimination because of her stepmother's background. Emma will face challenges because she's a human being living in an imperfect world. But she'll face them knowing she's loved completely by 2 parents who will fight for her happiness. Maria stepped back, needing space to think. I need time. This changes everything. Take all the time you need. But Maria, Richard waited until she looked at him again. Emma was right about something else. You do make me feel like the best version of myself. I hadn't realized how much I'd missed that feeling until she pointed it out. That afternoon, Richard picked Emma up from school himself, something he rarely did, usually leaving it to Maria or the after-school program. "Daddy!" Emma's face lit up with surprise as she spotted him among the other parents. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to talk to you about something important. Want to get ice cream?" 20 minutes later, they sat in a corner booth at Emma's favorite ice cream shop. Emma with a towering sundae and Richard with coffee. He wasn't really drinking. "I talked to Maria today about what you said last night." Emma's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "You did?" "I did. And I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me." Emma nodded seriously. "Are you sure about this? Really sure? Because if Maria becomes part of our family in that way, it would be forever. She would be your stepmother, not just someone who works for us. And some people might not understand or approve of our choice." "What kind of people?" "Some of the other parents at your school, some of Daddy's business friends, some of the families we know from the club." Emma considered this gravely. Would they be mean to Maria? They might be. Some people have wrong ideas about what makes someone valuable or worthy of respect. That's stupid. Yes, it is. But it might still happen. And if it did, it might affect you too. Other kids might say unkind things. Emma set down her spoon and looked at her father with eyes that seemed far older than 7. "Daddy, do you remember when Tommy Chen's mom came to career day?" "Tommy's mom? The one who's a doctor?" "Yes, but some kids were mean because she looked different and talked different. They said their parents said she wasn't really American." Richard felt his stomach tighten. He remembered the incident Emma was referring to, and he was ashamed to admit he'd been one of the parents who hadn't spoken up when he'd overheard the comments. "What did you think about that?" "I thought it was stupid then too. Tommy's mom saves people's lives. That's more important than where she was born or how she talks." Emma picked up her spoon again, swirling her melting ice cream thoughtfully. "Maria saves people too, Daddy. Different kind of saving. She saves us from being sad and lonely and scared. She saves us from having a house that's just a house instead of a home." Richard felt his throat close up. "You really believe that?" "I really do. And if other people are too dumb to see how wonderful Maria is, that's their problem, not ours." That evening, Richard called his 3 candidates and politely but definitively ended his courtship with each of them. Victoria was gracious, but clearly puzzled. Stephanie seemed almost relieved. Catherine was understanding and wished him well, adding that she hoped he would find happiness wherever it led him. Then he sat down and did something he hadn't done since Claire died. He wrote a love letter. But this letter wasn't to Maria. It was to Emma, explaining why he'd been so focused on finding someone suitable instead of trusting her wisdom about what their family really needed. It was an apology for not seeing sooner that love, the kind that made a house feel like home, was more valuable than any social connection or business advantage. He slipped the letter under Emma's door and went to his own room to wait for Maria's answer, knowing that whatever she decided would change their lives forever. Outside, Seattle's city lights twinkled with the same indifference as always. But inside the Whitmore house, a man was learning that sometimes the most important decisions aren't made with spreadsheets and strategic planning, but with the wisdom of a 7-year-old who knew that love, real love, was the only thing that really mattered. Maria didn't sleep that night. She sat at her small kitchen table in her studio apartment, staring at a cup of tea that had long since gone cold, wrestling with emotions and possibilities she'd never dared to entertain. For 2 years, she'd been in love with Richard Whitmore, and hadn't admitted it even to herself. She'd told herself that her feelings were simply maternal affection for Emma and professional respect for Richard. She'd convinced herself that the way her heart raced when he smiled at her, the way she found excuses to linger in rooms where he was working, the way she dreamed about being part of their family instead of just serving it, all of that was just the foolish fantasy of a woman who'd been alone too long. But yesterday, when Richard had looked into her eyes and asked if she loved them, she'd been forced to confront the truth she'd been hiding from. She was completely, desperately in love with both of them. And that terrified her more than she could express. Maria had grown up poor in El Salvador, the daughter of a woman who cleaned houses for wealthy families. She learned early that there was an invisible but impermeable barrier between the people who served and the people who were served. You could care for them, even love them in your way, but you never forgot your place. When she'd come to America at 25, she'd brought those lessons with her. She'd worked for other wealthy families before the Whitmores, and she'd seen what happened when lines got blurred. She'd watched other domestic workers get their hearts broken when they mistook kindness for something more, when they forgot that they were employees, not family. But Emma had never treated her like an employee. From the time she was a toddler, Emma had run to Maria with skinned knees and bad dreams, had shared her toys and her secrets, and her fierce little girl love without any awareness of social boundaries. And after Claire died, when Emma was drowning in grief, Maria had stepped into the gap not because it was her job, but because she couldn't bear to see that precious child suffer. Somewhere in the process of loving Emma back to emotional stability, Maria had fallen in love with Emma's father too. She'd fallen in love with his dedication to his daughter, with the way he struggled to balance work and parenting, with the vulnerability he tried so hard to hide behind his successful businessman persona. She'd fallen in love with the man who worked late into the night to provide for his family, then got up early to make Emma breakfast even when he was exhausted. She'd fallen in love with the father who kept Claire's photo on his desk and told Emma stories about her mother so she'd never forget her. She'd fallen in love with the employer who never made her feel lesser, who asked about her classes and remembered details about her life, who trusted her judgment about his most precious possession, his daughter. But love, Maria had learned, wasn't always enough. At 6 a.m, she made her decision. She showered, dressed carefully in her best clothes, and prepared to have the most important conversation of her life. Richard was already in the kitchen when she arrived, sitting at the counter with his laptop and a cup of coffee, clearly having slept as poorly as she had. "Maria," he said, looking up from his laptop. The relief in his voice at seeing her was unmistakable. "We need to talk," Maria said quietly, setting down her purse but not removing her coat. Richard closed his laptop immediately. "Of course. Coffee?" "No, thank you." Maria remained standing, needing the distance to say what she'd come to say. "I've made my decision." Richard went very still, his hands wrapped around his coffee mug like a lifeline. "And?" "I can't do this, Richard. I can't marry you." The words hit him like a physical blow, but Maria forced herself to continue before she lost her courage. "It's not because I don't love you. I do. I love you and Emma more than I ever thought possible. But that's exactly why I can't do this to you." "Maria, let me finish, please." Maria's voice shook slightly, but her resolve remained firm. You think you want this now, but you haven't thought it through. Not really. What happens when your business partners start questioning your judgment? When Emma's private school starts treating her differently? When you're excluded from social events because people don't approve of your wife? Richard started to speak, but Maria held up her hand. You're a good man, Richard. You believe love conquers everything because you've been privileged enough to live in a world where your choices haven't been questioned. But I've lived in both worlds. I know what it's like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to have people assume you're less intelligent or less worthy because of where you come from. I would never let anyone treat you that way. You couldn't stop them. And eventually the pressure would wear on you. You'd start to resent me for the opportunities you'd lost, the doors that closed, the complications I brought into your perfectly ordered life. Maria's voice broke slightly. And Emma? Sweet Emma, who thinks love is enough to solve everything. She doesn't understand yet what it means to be different. What it means when other children's parents whisper about your family, when opportunities are quietly withdrawn, when you're always having to prove you belong. Richard stood up, moving toward her. Maria, please. I won't do that to her. I won't be the reason Emma's life becomes more difficult. She's already lost so much. She'd lose more without you. Maria shook her head, tears starting to fall. She'll lose me anyway when you realize this was a mistake. But if that happens after we're married, after she started thinking of me as her mother, it would destroy her. I'm not going to change my mind. You say that now. But Richard, I've seen you at your charity galas, your business dinners. You belong in that world. It's not just about money. It's about connections, shared experiences, common ground. I don't have any of that. Richard was quiet for a moment, and Maria felt her heart break a little more, interpreting his silence as acknowledgement of the truth in her words. You're right, he said finally. Maria closed her eyes, the confirmation of her fears hitting harder than she'd expected. You're right that I belong in that world, Richard continued. But you're wrong about why. Maria looked at him in confusion. I belong in that world because I was born into privilege, because I had opportunities handed to me that I didn't earn, because I've never had to prove my worth based on anything other than my bank account and my connections. Richard moved closer, his voice gaining strength. But belonging somewhere because of accident of birth isn't the same as deserving to be there. And I've been thinking a lot about what I actually deserve. Richard, do I deserve Emma's love? I've been so focused on providing for her materially that I've missed half of her childhood. I didn't know she makes up stories about star-shaped pancakes. I didn't know she gets scared during thunderstorms. I didn't know she draws horses because she dreams of learning to ride. Maria wiped her eyes, unsure where he was going with this. Do I deserve the respect of people who would judge my family based on my wife's accent or her education level? Do I deserve business relationships that depend on maintaining social prejudices? Do I deserve to be part of a community that would exclude my daughter because of who her stepmother is? Richard reached out, gently taking Maria's hands. Or do I deserve something better? Do I deserve a woman who loves my daughter enough to put her needs first, even when it breaks her heart? Do I deserve someone who makes our house feel like a home just by being in it? Do I deserve Emma's happiness more than other people's approval? It's not that simple, isn't it? Richard's grip on her hands tightened. Maria, yesterday I spent the day watching you with Emma. Really watching, not just glancing up from my laptop or my phone. Do you know what I saw? Maria shook her head. I saw my daughter completely herself for the first time in 3 years. Not performing, not trying to be the perfect grieving child who doesn't cause trouble. Just Emma. Happy, curious, secure Emma. Richard's voice grew thick with emotion. I saw her tell you about a dream she had where she could fly, and instead of dismissing it or telling her dreams aren't real, you asked her where she flew to and listened to her describe flying over rainbow forests and cloud cities like it was the most important story you'd ever heard. Children should be allowed to dream. Yes, they should. But I haven't been encouraging her dreams, Maria. I've been so focused on preparing her for reality that I forgot she's still allowed to be 7 years old. Richard released her hands and began pacing, energy building in his voice. And I saw something else. I saw you helping her with her math homework. And when she got frustrated, you didn't just give her the answers. You found 3 different ways to explain the concept until you found the one that clicked for her. You celebrated her success like she just solved calculus instead of basic addition. She's very smart. She needs someone who sees her potential and nurtures it patiently. Someone who doesn't give up on her when things get difficult. Richard stopped pacing and faced Maria directly. She needs you. Maria felt her carefully constructed resolve beginning to crumble. But the other things, your social world, your business, I've been thinking about that too. My business is successful because I make good investments and I work with reliable people. The social networking is nice, but it's not essential. As for the charity boards and country club memberships, Richard paused, a slight smile playing at his lips. Maybe it's time I found causes I actually care about instead of just writing checks to look good. What do you mean? I mean, maybe instead of donating to the Junior League's annual fundraiser, I should be supporting organizations that help immigrant families or provide education opportunities for people like you who want to better themselves. Maybe instead of playing golf with men who've never worked a day in their lives, I should be using my resources to make a real difference. Maria stared at him. You're talking about changing your entire life. I'm talking about building a life that means something, a life that Emma can be proud of, that teaches her that people's worth isn't measured by their pedigree or their bank account. Richard moved closer again, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Maria, what if we could build something better than what I had before? What if we could create a family that values love over status, authenticity over appearances, character over connections? And what if we can't? What if the pressure is too much? What if... Then we'll face it together. All 3 of us. Before Maria could respond, they heard footsteps on the stairs. Emma appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, her hair mussed from sleep. Maria? Emma's voice was small and uncertain. Are you leaving? Maria's heart clenched at the fear in the child's voice. No, mi amor. Your father and I were talking. Emma looked back and forth between them, her 7-year-old intuition picking up on the tension in the room. Are you sad? A little sad, yes. Emma walked over and wrapped her arms around Maria's waist, burying her face in Maria's stomach. Don't be sad. Daddy made me pancakes yesterday, but they weren't stars. They were just round and boring. Despite everything, Maria found herself smiling. Round pancakes can be good too. Not as good as yours. Emma looked up at her with those serious blue eyes. I had a dream last night. What did you dream about? I dreamed we were all together, like a real family. You and Daddy were married, and we lived in a house with a big garden where I could plant flowers and you could grow the vegetables for your restaurant." Maria's breath caught. "My restaurant? The one you want to open, with your grandmother's recipes. In my dream, it was the most popular restaurant in the whole city, and people came from everywhere to eat your food and tell you how wonderful it was." Richard and Maria exchanged a look over Emma's head. "And in my dream," Emma continued, "nobody cared that you were born in a different country or that you used to be our housekeeper. They just cared that you made the best food and that you made Daddy smile and that you loved me like I was your own daughter." Emma pulled back to look at Maria directly. "Do you love me like I'm your own daughter?" Maria knelt down so she was at Emma's eye level. "Oh, mi amor, I love you more than the moon and stars, more than anything in this world. And you love Daddy too?" Maria glanced at Richard, who was watching them both with an expression of such tender hope that it took her breath away. "Yes," she whispered, "I love your Daddy too. Then why can't we be a family, a real family, out of the mouths of babes?" Emma's simple question cut through all of Maria's careful arguments, all her fears and practical concerns. "It's complicated, sweetheart. But why does it have to be complicated? Love isn't complicated. Love is the simplest thing in the world." Maria looked at this remarkable child, this wise, brave, loving little girl who had somehow figured out what the adults were making so difficult. "You know what, Emma? You're absolutely right." Emma's face lit up. "I am?" Maria stood up and turned to face Richard, her decision finally truly made. "Yes, love is simple. Everything else is just details." Richard's face transformed with hope. "Maria?" "Yes," she said, her voice strong and certain for the first time since this conversation began. "Yes, I'll marry you. Yes, I'll be Emma's stepmother. Yes, I'll help you build a family based on love instead of social expectations." Emma let out a squeal of joy and launched herself at both of them, wrapping her arms around their legs as tears of happiness streamed down Maria's face. "But," Maria said, looking at Richard seriously over Emma's head, "we do this together, all of it. The challenges, the judgments, the difficult moments, we face them as a team." "As a team," Richard agreed, reaching for her hand. "And we never ever forget that this little girl's happiness comes first." "Always," Richard said solemnly. Emma looked up at both of them. "Does this mean Maria will live here all the time now, and I can call her Mom if I want to?" "If she wants you to," Richard said gently. Emma turned to Maria with hope shining in her eyes. "Can I?" Maria knelt down again, cupping Emma's face in her hands. "Mi amor, there is nothing in this world I would be more honored by than being your mom." Emma threw her arms around Maria's neck. "I love you, Mom," she whispered. "I love you too, mija, forever and always." The wedding had been small, just Emma as flower girl, Richard's brother as best man, and Maria's sister as maid of honor, along with a handful of close friends. They'd held it in the garden behind their house, with Emma's star-shaped pancakes served alongside traditional wedding cake. Some of Richard's business associates had been surprised by his choice. A few had even been openly disapproving, but Richard had discovered something remarkable. The people whose respect he'd lost hadn't been worth having in the first place, and the ones who truly mattered had embraced Maria with genuine warmth. More importantly, his business had actually grown. Freed from the obligation to maintain superficial social connections, Richard had been able to focus on building real relationships with clients and partners who valued substance over style. And his involvement with organizations supporting immigrant families and educational opportunities had introduced him to a whole community of people working to make a real difference in the world. Maria's restaurant dream was becoming reality too. With Richard's business expertise and financial backing, combined with Maria's culinary gifts and warm hospitality, they were planning to open Abuela's Kitchen in the spring. But the biggest change was in Emma, the reserved, careful child who had been afraid to get too attached, had blossomed into a confident, joyful little girl who knew without question that she was loved completely by both her parents. "Mom," Emma called from the garden, where she was helping Maria plant vegetables. "The tomatoes are getting big." "They are, mi amor. Soon we'll have enough for fresh salsa." Richard watched from the kitchen window as his wife and daughter worked side by side in the garden, Emma chattering excitedly about everything and nothing, Maria listening with the same devoted attention she'd always given to Emma's stories and dreams. His phone rang, interrupting his peaceful observation. It was his assistant. "Mr. Whitmore, I have Mrs. Ashford on the line. She says it's important." Richard frowned. He hadn't spoken to Victoria since he'd ended their brief courtship over a year ago. "Put her through." "Richard?" Victoria's voice was strained. "I hope you don't mind me calling." "Not at all. Is everything all right?" I wanted to apologize." "Apologize?" "For some things I said about your marriage, about your wife. I wasn't very kind, and I'm ashamed of that." Richard was quiet, waiting for her to continue. "I saw you all at the Children's Hospital benefit last month. Your wife was volunteering in the kitchen, and your daughter was helping serve food to the families. And I watched how happy they were, how natural and loving you all were together." Victoria paused, her voice becoming emotional. "I realized that what you built with Maria and Emma, that's real love. That's what I've been looking for my whole life and never found because I was too focused on what looked right instead of what felt right. Victoria, I just wanted you to know that I was wrong about everything, and I wanted to say that your family is beautiful, Richard, really beautiful." After the call ended, Richard stood at the window for a while longer, watching his wife and daughter. Emma was now chasing butterflies between the tomato plants, while Maria laughed and pretended to try to catch them too. Love wasn't about finding someone suitable, Richard had learned. It wasn't about maintaining social connections or building strategic alliances. Love was about finding someone who made you want to be your best self, who loved your child as fiercely as you did, who turned a house into a home just by being in it. Love was about choosing each other every day, even when the world didn't understand your choice. Love was watching your daughter run to the woman who'd become her mother with absolute trust and joy, knowing that she was safe and cherished and completely, utterly loved. "Daddy," Emma called from the garden, "come help us. Mom says we can make a scarecrow." "Coming," Richard called back, abandoning his laptop and his phone to join his family in the garden. As he knelt beside Maria to help Emma stuff straw into old clothes, Maria caught his eye and smiled, that warm, genuine smile that had first made him realize what he'd been missing. "No regrets?" she asked quietly. Richard looked at his daughter, who was seriously explaining to the scarecrow that his job was to protect the vegetables but be nice to the butterflies, then at his wife, who was listening to this 7-year-old wisdom with the same respect she'd give to a business proposal. "Not a single one," he said, and meant it completely. Sometimes the best choices weren't the obvious ones. Sometimes love came from the most unexpected places. And sometimes a 7-year-old girl knew better than all the adults combined what really mattered. Emma had been right all along. Love was simple. Everything else was just details.